This video was not meant to exist. The first time anyone saw these frames, the people who knew about Project Maelstrom swore the footage would stay buried. Someone kept it anyway. Someone leaked it. What follows is the recovered tape, stitched together with interviews and witness accounts. Watch carefully. Once you see it, you cannot unknow it. It begins in 1985, in a classified facility tucked into a dense stand of pines in the Pacific Northwest. On paper, it was a research outpost, sensory studies, cognitive endurance, resilience training. In whispered reports, it had another name, a program trying to bend perception itself. The lab was modern, clinical, and cold. Cameras were everywhere. The crew called the experiments isolation trials. The military called them operational enhancement. The men inside called them nights that did not end. The first segment of the tape opens unsteady. A handheld camera, light wobbling, pans across a corridor lined with steel doors. Fluorescent lights buzz. A technician's voice overlaps with mechanical humming. Start sequence! And then panic. A young scientist steps into frame, pale, eyes wide as if he has seen a ghost no one else can see. He whispers, not to the camera, but to someone behind it. "You don't understand." He chokes. Something moves in the glass behind him, a smear like oil across a mirror. He screams. The microphone cuts. A title fades in. Lost tape. 1985. The tape is corrupted in places, frames skipping into static, audio folding over itself. When the image returns, it shows two soldiers strapped into isolation booths. Headphones, blindfolds, pulse monitors. The room is clinical, but the air in the footage has weight. You can feel the hum of machines and the low, constant thrum beneath the lower frequencies. As the session begins, both men breathe in measured cadence. The observers exchange notes. A clock ticks down. At first, the test looks ordinary. Sensory deprivation, recorded reactions. Then the first soldier's jaw trembles. His thumbs flex. He breathes faster. The camera pulls close to his face. Sweat beads on his lip in exaggerated detail. He whispers to himself. The second soldier's eyelids flutter. A shadow moves across the reflection of the observation pane. No one is on that side. On the tape, the technicians only glance. They do not intervene. Their faces are drawn, but clinical. Later interviews with former staff, now older, hands shaking while they speak, describe the phenomenon in softer tones, as if the memory is painful to hold. A retired neurologist says, "We expected stress, disorientation, not presences." A young tech who ran the playback consoles remembers hearing voices on the recordings that weren't in the room. "They called us by name," she says, "but no one was there." More frames show the soldier thrashing in his booth, his fingers clawing at the air. He begins to scream into the blindfold, guttural syllables with no language. The faces of the observers blur. Someone tries to stop the experiment, but a senior officer waves him off. "Continue," the officer says. On the tape, his voice echoes like it was recorded in a well. The soldier's voice becomes a ghastly chorus, as if multiple people are singing in the same throat. Then, silence. The monitor flatlines, but the audio keeps a whisper in the background, the kind you feel more than hear. As the investigator in this assembled footage, I found myself returning to a particular segment, the corridor camera that faces the observation room's glass. For 42 frames, a figure appears in the reflection behind an observer. It is tall, not fully human in proportion, its shoulders too narrow and jointed at wrong angles. It stands impossibly still. The observer moves, but the figure does not. And then, in the same blink, the figure is gone. The frame jitters. If you slow it down, the figure seems to lean toward the glass as if listening. The tapes contain fragments of everyday life at the facility. Mismatched meals, a postcard pinned on a corkboard, a man playing guitar badly in a break room, laughter that sounds forced. Then nights become dominated by static and clipped audio logs of experiments. Men who once joked now sound haunted. A soldier describes waking to find the words, "You are here," written on the inside of the booth's plexiglass, traced from the outside. He insists he did not scratch it. He was alone when he fell asleep. One technician swears she watched a man walk out of a chamber, and then, while he stood talking, watched another version of him reflected in the lab's darkened monitor behind him. It wasn't a trick of light, she says. He saw it. He turned and reached, then screamed like someone had hit him. When asked why no one stopped the tests, she lowers her voice. Orders. We were told to observe, to record, to learn. The footage's tension builds through small things. A cup left on a windowsill moving an inch between shots. A door closing an instant before anyone in the room moves. The faint smell of ozone that a witness remembers when she watches the tape decades later. The sound design on the original tape does something unnatural. Low notes fold into higher harmonics. And when you replay the audio in studio, you can pick out syllables beneath the hum, like a chant under the wind. Then comes the last proper recording, a segment that runs nearly 3 minutes in a single unbroken shot. A soldier sits with a camera fixed on him from the side. He rocks slightly. His hands are bound to armrests. His name tag reads, M. Hayes. He speaks at first in soft, disconnected phrases. He talks about a place behind the walls, about a voice promising to make him better, to open the door. He laughs, a dry, almost manic sound, then goes quiet. You can see his pupils dilate. He speaks less in words and more in syllables, repeating strings. Under, under, under. His breathing becomes shallow. He turns his head, as if responding to something nobody else can hear. The reflection in the pane behind him grows darker, a vague mass coalescing where nothing should be. On frame 213 of that shot, the soldier says, in a voice that is not quite his own, "It wants a window." He goes very still. The reflection stirs. A shape steps into the reflected room and reaches out. The soldier's mouth opens, and he smiles without showing teeth. Then his hands move, slow and precise, and the camera operator at the control console in the observation room stands, pressing his palms to the glass, as if he can feel something on the other side. The tape picks up an indistinct rasp, breathing layered like many lungs. Equipment alarms start to ring, but the audio skews, and the alarms sound distant, as if underwater. Then the camera jerks, the lens smudges, footsteps run. Someone screams in the control room, a single human scream, and then the image collapses into black noise. The recovered documents show a flurry of memos after the final blackout. The command logs for that month are redacted. A declassified note indicates protocol breach, containment compromised, then a stamped order, facility closed, quarantine enacted. After that, civil records show early retirements, a handful of disappearances listed as AWOL, and one internal memo that simply reads, "Shut down and forget." I visited the facility years later, when the doors had been pried open by trespassers and ivy pushing through concrete. The building smells of rust and wet paper. There is a control room with dust-dulled monitors frozen on static. On a table, a cup remained, rimmed with a dark ring. A loose note, half faded, said only, "They are in the glass." On the wall, scratched shallowly into paint, someone had etched a symbol, a ring with 3 short lines breaking its left side. No legend matches it. No one I showed it to remembered drawing it. The locals call the place the Hollow Lab now and avoid it at night. When I played the tape for witnesses in the town near the facility, some refused to watch. Others watched, eyes slack, and then left the room as if to clear their heads. A woman whose brother worked there slipped out during the playback, returning with a small, worn photograph of a soldier smiling at the camera. She placed it on the TV and said, "They never brought him home." She would not say his name. The final audio on the recovered media is the most unsettling. Not a scream, but a whisper across channels. Several sources transcribed it differently. "They're still here. You cannot leave. Stay with us." But the cadence is the same. Slow, deliberate, like a tide pulling words inward. In the studio, when we run the spectrum analysis, there are patterns, harmonics, and quiet beats that do not match human speech. Some engineers call it interference. Some of the old staff call it language. I will not claim to know what Project Maelstrom ultimately encountered. The official files suggest it was closed for ethical breaches. The unofficial reports fill the gaps with rumor that the program had extended its reach into perceptual thresholds, that whatever was seen in reflections could be coaxed into thin places where the mind is raw, that it fed on attention and consent. Men and women returned home different, or they did not return at all. The local cemetery marks several graves from that era, with dates clustered and names that read like a roster of strange effects. Some report dreams of being trapped behind glass, observing their own life from the other side of a window. Others wake feeling a presence directly behind their bed, only to find nothing. Months after the tape circulated, people posted online about seeing the same ring and line symbol in their homes, on fogged mirrors, carved into soap, faintly burned. Skeptics claim it's mass suggestion. Believers insist the image anchors itself. Whatever the truth, all I can show is what the footage captured. Project Maelstrom's recordings end in raw terror and incomplete answers. The last frame I ever saw on the tape is a smear of light that might be a face or might be a lens flare. Over it slides a whisper repeating two words, low and patient. "Look again." After that, the tape tears. If this is fiction, it is a good one, braided with technical detail, human voices, and the believable bureaucracy of obfuscation. If it is truth, then these are minutes of men who encountered something that used the very act of looking as an invitation. The difference between both is not important. What matters is this: the footage exists, and people watched. Some things, once seen, cannot be unseen. The question is not whether Project Maelstrom was real, only what you will do with the image in the corner of a monitor when it appears, the way your reflection lags in the glass. Will you look away, or will you lean in and see what looks back?